Hello everybody, my name's Genevieve Campbell and I'm presenting today on behalf of Jacinta Tipungwuti, Callista, Kantilla and Concepta Orsto who worked with me on this presentation. I'd like to acknowledge the elders and the knowledge and the art and the song and the dance that have been performed on the land that where you are, wherever you are today, and also where we all are, and also of course that I'm presenting today the knowledge of Tiwi ancestors who, through their words and through their thoughts and through their songs, are with us all today. Before I continue, I must point out that our dear friend Concepta Orsto, who was working, as I said, on this presentation with me in November, died suddenly in early December. It's with great sadness that I look at her face today, and I assure you all that her inclusion in this presentation is with the permission and indeed the great pride of her family. The recordings I'm talking about today were returned to the Tiwi community, having been held in IATSIS in Canberra. As we all discuss and ponder the immense richness and power of archives and how they can be used for cultural preservation and for continuity of practice, it's also a really interesting point to just think how all of this really relies, of course, on the knowledge holders themselves, those who speak the language and those who sing the songs, because without those people, all of those archives really don't mean much at all. Concepta put it this way when we were talking about this presentation. While we work to translate the old songs into a language that our children can sing, we find that a lot of the song words can't really be translated. The old song words and the old songs we still sing and that we hear in the archive are just the starting point that remind us of the stories that they refer to. It's the story that we pass down when we give our children the songs, not just the words. The meaning is there all around the words and how they go together, where they come from and who sings them. Educated listeners of any musical genre will have an emotional and intellectual response to what they're hearing, partly based on what they expect to be hearing of that music. Tiwi listeners are exactly the same. There are 10 Tiwi melodies, each with its own function and performance context, and they all elicit a response, whether that's one of ritual protocol, one of sorrow, or one of joy. Across all of these melodies, there are, of course, a number of variations, ornamentations and idiosyncrasies being extemporised and or composed by different individuals with their different vocal styles. Tiwi listeners also hear family lines of vocal techniques and timbres. But notwithstanding all of this, there is the underlying contour of a song melody that will elicit a particular response. I'll play you two versions of Mamanankuni, which is Sorrow. The first is Stephen Paul Kantilla. And the next, in quite a different way of performing, is Tractor Joe. So the Tiwi listener is hearing more than what is there because their minds are adding experiential knowledge, memory and meaning to what they're hearing. So with these two Mamankuni songs, even for younger listeners who don't understand the words, they tell me that these songs mean sadness, sympathy, mourning and respect.
It comes from the Kulama when they sing. And us, our ladies, we understand what they're saying, what they're singing about. And because it's the old way of doing that. Old people used to do that in the past. Well, you know, they've been there all the time when things was, you know, they were out in the bush. And they did that because they had that knowledge how they've been like together out in the bush, and they have lots of, you know, words comes in their mind, through their mind, and they sing about that. It's been it's the old people used to tell us about that when the old people in the past used to do. But today we have that knowledge passing down to our young people, telling them about it. But that thing, we try to bring them back and have a new way of, you know, because there's always culture there in them, in us, all the people that we live, Tiwi people, what we call Tiwi people. There's a culture there always in us.
Tiwi song texts are richly poetic, and so there's a multi-level understanding that different listeners will have. There's, of course, is the inherent meaning of what the song is actually about. There's the linguistic or translatable meaning, the face value of the words, if you like. There's the context of when the song was sung, why it was sung, and who it was sung by and for. There's rich imagery and symbolism and epithet and allusion. There's a large degree of variation between sung language and spoken language, so the language changes, is added to, there are diminutions and additions at the point of performance. There's an inherited knowledge of names, of places, of stories, and this accumulation of oral history through heuristic learning, through initiation into song. There are lexical changes in the language and the words used between different country groups, and also, of course, through generations, as normal lexical change happens through the shutting down of songs when people die, or just of oral lexical change. Of course, there's individual artistic expression. There are just as many poetic variations in these songs as there are musical idiosyncrasies. And importantly, there's also spirit language. A number of songs are dreamed or heard by songmen and songwomen in the bush that are sung by spirits and sung by ancestors that don't use language that is spoken today. This song was sung by Ali Miller Mangatopi in 1954. Mountford gave this translation in 1954. This is Ali's song of the Pukamani. My father was king and I am Prince of Wales. As King George is king, so is the old man on the hill my father. I shall have warships, money, and a flag of red and white. Now you can see that translation bears little resemblance to the translation that Osborne did much later of this song. I'll take you through some of what Tiwi people have got out of this. Prince of Wales and his son George King were both leaders in the Larrakia Nation in Darwin in the 1950s, and this royal status that was sort of a construct really of the colonial media in the early 20th century, with anglicised notions of tribal rulers as kings, was pervasive throughout songs in this era. Tiwi songs often talk about Prince of Wales as being a powerful man, whether they're talking about the powerful man in Larrakia or whether it's symbolic, of course, of the deceased, but also of the prince generally, or of power, is a matter for consideration. Lettermani is letterman, and it alludes to people with positions of power, office workers, or people who sent letters. There were almost as many understandings of this song as there were listeners, in terms of when and why it was sung. Elders recognise Nilimpangi in line 1 as a time marker, indicating that the song belongs to the evening of the first day of Kulama, the lying down time, when bereavement songs are sung. Those younger than about 50 told me that the word means he's died, or sadness for his death, presumably because they recognise this word as being always sung in these types of songs. Also in line 1, Ringani is translated as father. The syllable ri is also a prefix meaning away from camp, at a distance, and some listeners therefore understood this to mean that the deceased father or ancestor was back in his country, away from people. Osborne translates Ringilani in line 2 and Wingilani in line 3 as flag. Putting a flag outside the house of a recently deceased person was a common occurrence, and indeed today people hang pieces of fabric around the dance ground at funerals. However, it doesn't appear in either Osborne's or the current Tiwi dictionary, and none of my friends who were listening heard the words as flag. Osborne also gives no translation for the word kunchi in line 2. Opinion is that it might be kunji, an Iwaja loanword, meaning door, referring to the flags being held outside the door of the house of the deceased. Alternatively, kunji as an incorporated form relates to cooking, the time marker for the morning of the third day of Kulama. Some also heard kuntiri, meaning to be covered, symbolising the body or the coffin being covered at the funeral. Other Tiwi listeners hear kunchi, shell, and say that the singer might be referring to the coastal country of the deceased. The other alternative is that it is simply 2 syllables that have been added to complete the metrical form. Wingilani in line 3 was heard differently by a lot of people, and so resulted in a lot of different translations. Some of my friends heard wingi, meaning food. This fits with the singer's possible use of words marking the cooking stage of the Kulama ceremony. The word wingili means both oka and initiation song, and so some listeners heard in the text the symbolism of the Kulama ceremony's role as an initiation ritual, or of the deceased's role as a songman and teacher. Instead of Tiwingilani, some heard Tiwingi, Tiwi meaning people, and the suffix ngi meaning outbush or in country. Not recognising lani, they then treated those 2 syllables as metrical sung fillers. In the current Tiwi dictionary, riyi is listed meaning to depart, indicating there has been a vowel change from grayi to ri. The syllables ki and ti can be separated from kitigrayi, ki being an evening time of the day affix, and ti is a past tense prefix, so ngilani kitigrayi suggests that the deceased has gone to his country. Bereavement songs often include imagery related to the departing of the deceased or of the living being left behind. The reference in line 3 to the deceased leaving in a train most likely came about because Ali Miller had been in Brisbane and seen a train in March 1954. And so singing only a few months later adding the train as a very modern symbol of departure would have been a newsworthy inclusion in his song. So as we can see, we got a number of different understandings from a seemingly simple song.
A man made a song for his girlfriend. I'll take you to the other side. That boy said, I love you. That girl said, I can't take you. That boy said, because I got another girl the other side. And that girl said, I'll go with you. And she cried for her boyfriend. I can't stay here, I want to go with you. I love you. That's the song now. The last song for you, Mop.
Callista helped me go through this song, which was sung by Romuald Puruntada Mary in 1975, singing as the classificatory mother of the deceased. It translates most simply as, I am the swampy water, I am the limpid pool of water, now I gush through. Looking further into this song text, we can see, for instance, in line 1, I've indicated in orange here, the words that are not translatable but mark the time of when they were sung, the lying down time in this instance, and who was singing, the mother in this instance, because of rest. In the second line, we also hear the lying down time words. And in the third line, Jikulinji means painted up, so it's indicating that it's being sung in ritual, in ceremony, and that Romuald is painted up in his role as the grieving dancer. Callista gave me what her understanding is of this song. She says, in the first line, he's singing in the voice of the dead man. I am the swampy water. I am the ancestor of that country, the swamp where the geese live. I am goose dreaming. So line 1 tells us that he's goose dreaming from that country. In line 2, Romuald sings in his own voice as the mother. Here I am the clear pool of water. I am that water that nurtures your country. I am the breast milk that the dead man drank. I am his mother. Line 3, also in his own words, now I gush through, now as I'm here singing at his final ceremony with everybody painted up, I'm singing to send you on your way from here to the other place. So there's a lot more to hear in this song between the lines. Working with recorded archives, of course, we're always coming up against the question of is it even valid to try to translate and to capture and to record and to document, considering that Tiwi songs are always in the first person and present tense, and they're composed for the people who are listening, for the audience at the time of the performance, and that each song is sung for specific people with a shared knowledge and a shared understanding of what is being sung. Of course, this means that any song text is only partially translatable or understandable to non-Tiwi listeners, and also to young Tiwi listeners with a poorer capacity of knowledge of the old language. The problem that the elders now have is that with songs that shouldn't be repeated, are individually owned and shouldn't be written down, as it's an oral continuity of knowledge. How does one then find a way to appropriately and sensitively and with respect create a written document? Elders are trying to work out a way of creating a canon, therefore, of epithets, of metaphors, of poetic devices, and of all of the names to use in song, instead of actually potentially writing down the songs themselves.
My name is Concepta Orsto, and I'm from Tiwi Island, and I'm an ILC teacher, and I teach Tiwi language and culture in the school. I teach kids our Tiwi language, singing, dancing, storytelling, and skin groups, and the country where they belong. Dream and dance, where dream and dance they get it from. We explain more to the kids how they're connected. And also seasonal. We talk about seasonal now, from the beginning to the middle to the end. And art comes in there as well. Storytelling, role play the story with the books. For example, like a man became a crocodile, and a little boy ate from the crocodile. Singing goes with that. It connected through the, the stories, singing.
Okay.
Currently, there's no public access place on the islands that can store the archive recordings. There's no meeting place, in fact, and people still need to pay to use the Land Council office if they want to have a meeting. We're trying to change that, hence the idea for the Knowledge and Culture Centre. The death of Concepta has stopped things in its tracks a little bit because she was a leader in this project and she was earmarked as being somebody who would be the centre manager. But we're pushing on and we're hoping that something will happen very soon. This is the building that we've been given, if you like. Still negotiating how we will go about being able to afford a sublease or push for a peppercorn rent if possible. It might not look much, but it's very exciting that there are actually walls and a roof on something that the women have been told that they can use. These were the three most important reasons for having the Culture Centre when the women were asked at the Land Council meeting. It's time that people need together. That's what they said. It's all about the fact that this knowledge can only be learned orally. It can only really be sung or at least talked about. And writing things down and expecting people to learn them from books is really not the way for it to be done. And also, really importantly, to create a positive atmosphere around culture and around song, because unfortunately at the moment, especially for young people on the islands, the only time they ever hear traditional song is in the context of death. And the elders really want to change that.
Melimbuka. Sandra. Hoa. How you forget your brain? Cooperation Center.
Say it again.
Melimbuka. Casual Center.
And why is it important to have that? Tell me why it's so important.
Because all of us today, from young and old, when that circle ceremony start, we're all in that Melimbuka dancing. Anything. Tirakapai, Jagopal, Tatawali, Papalo, Polaga, Ambiji, Jagopal, Dingo, Tatawali, why I go to Amatria, Ananga, Umperkara water with music. Tiwi song, English.